Good morning and welcome. And thank you all for being here today. Since we started these summits, there has been some progress on America's fiscal challenges. There is now an awareness of the problem, and the range of solutions has been laid out in Washington. And even though the process was ugly, last year both parties did put in place $2.2 trillion in deficit reduction. But the real long-term structural problem still remains. The true goal of long-term fiscal reform is to stabilize the debt as a share of the economy. By every account, we haven't done that. Most economists argue that debt should remain below 90% of GDP, and yet our national debt still races towards 200% over the next few decades. So here we are. Awareness is high. We know what's going on. Solutions are there. We know the menu of options. Yet our government is paralyzed. That's why the theme of this year's Fiscal Summit is America's Case for Action. Today's program will focus on the key aspects of building momentum for fiscal reform. The first key ingredient is the American people. Reform of this scale can't happen without the engagement of Americans. Everyone needs to be a part of this process so that together we can decide how best to build a future for our children and grandchildren. Recently, a team from our foundation went around the country and talked to Americans. You'll see several short videos throughout the day that demonstrate what they're thinking. In addition, as Pete mentioned, we commissioned a national survey that captured the views of Americans on a variety of fiscal questions. Our panel this afternoon addresses this question directly, and will discuss how best to engage our fellow Americans in this important dialogue. It's essential that everyone understands the direct connection between debt and jobs. In many ways, the fiscal issue is the jobs issue, the jobs of tomorrow. That's because the projected increases in government debt are so large that it could crush our future economy. Put simply, the more we borrow to fund deficits, the less we will have to invest in the future. And the less we invest, the slower we grow and the fewer jobs we create. Every dollar of debt is simply a dollar that will have to come out of a future economy with massive interest along the way. Not everyone understands the connection between federal debt and personal interest rates. They don't realize how much their household has riding on our fiscal future. All debt instruments are priced in relation to U.S. Treasuries. So if our skyrocketing debt causes the world to lose confidence in the U.S., the cost of everything will go up. Mortgage rates, car payments, business loans. A fiscal failure at the federal level takes money directly out of our pockets. In addition to higher monthly payments, we would face declines in the value of our homes and 401ks. So many could face the horrible situation where monthly payments are going up while the value of their assets are going down. But none of this needs to happen. The flip side of fiscal failure is putting in place a sustainable fiscal plan. The goal is to ensure that resources are focused on investment, growth, and opportunity, not on interest costs. Putting in place a long-term plan that gets implemented when the economy recovers would not jeopardize the current recovery, but would build confidence and the type of future economy that we all want. Everyone in this room understands this, but how do we effectively communicate this to America? How do we explain the connection between reducing the deficits and creating jobs? It's essential that they get it. Without the support of the people, no real fiscal reform is possible. Even when the politicians finally agree on how to stabilize the debt, if the American people aren't on the same page, it won't last. So let's stop underestimating Americans and start including them in this process. Today's panel will jumpstart that dialogue. We also need a way through the politics. This morning's panel will take on the tough questions of how to build the political will to get this job done. In any difficult political challenge, what is most needed is leadership. Leadership from both the White House and Congress. We know that the solution to this problem must be bipartisan. That's the only thing that can pass in divided government, and it's the only solution that will last for future Congresses. If you look back through recent budget history to Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, to Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, successful budget policy happens when both parties work together. It's just not realistic to think that one party alone is going to win this fight. That illusion just causes paralysis. Now, the House Republicans deserve real credit for passing a fiscal plan that stabilizes the debt for the long term. But the plan they put forth, tax cuts and smaller government, appeals only to their base. It's a starting point, but what would it take to move beyond the base and acknowledge that we need to include the other party if we really want to fix this problem? The Democrats have focused on higher taxes for the well-off, but to lead this nation towards a viable fiscal solution, they must explain to their base why everything, including changes in entitlements, needs to be on the table. If we want secure entitlements that Americans can depend on, then we need to make gradual and compassionate changes to make sure they are stabilized and solvent. The members of the Gang of Six have shown exactly this type of bipartisan leadership. They deserve great credit for the courage they have displayed in supporting a plan that reflects cooperation and for advocating for progress rather than perfection. No one thought the Simpson-Bowles plan was perfect, even those who supported it. But opponents of the plan overstate the extent to which it violates principle. I find it difficult to understand what principle was violated by Simpson-Bowles gradually extending the retirement age so that 40 years from now, it's just 1 year higher. Could it really be true that working until 67 is okay, but 68 is a violation of principle, especially when we're all living so much longer? And Simpson-Bowles eliminated tax breaks and used 90% of the savings to reduce rates and put just 10% towards deficit reduction. That increased revenues by only 0.5% of GDP, or just $1 trillion over 10 years. The current plan is to collect $36 trillion in revenue over the next 10 years. Is it really plausible to say that collecting 37 is a violation of principle? Those who refuse to budge say they're standing on principle, but sometimes it seems like they're actually hiding behind it. In sum, if leaders of both sides don't give an inch, one day our creditors will take a mile. We need our leaders to put their preferences aside and commit to the principle of getting something done before it's too late. Before we go to the next segment, I might take a moment of personal privilege to say a few words about my father. He's been at this fiscal thing a long time. Even though you may think I'm a newcomer to this issue, the truth is that I've been focused on America's debt and deficits for about 38 years now. And that's because my father has been giving me fiscal lectures since I was 4 years old. Other kids would get bedtime stories. I would get explanations of debt to GDP. Other kids would wake up with nightmares about monsters. I would wake up in a cold sweat, panicked that the 10-year Treasury had spiked 300 basis points in overnight trading. So there were a few downsides growing up with Pete Peterson. But on a more serious note, I just want to say that he is truly the best role model one could ask for in a father. He cares deeply about this country and its future. His dedication and hard work are unmatched. And even though it looks like he thinks all about the budget, he's just a lovable and fun person to spend time with. And he cares about and loves his family so much. Several of his family members are here today, and so I just want to say how proud we are of you, Dad. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do for us as a father, and thank you for what you're doing for this nation. Pete Peterson.